And now we have the really interesting part, which is custom remapper. The custom remapper, the main part is up here. So on the left it has the input range, and on the right it has the output range, and you can set those to different things. So if you say the input range is 0 to 1, you could say the output range is, I'm just using X to move these, by the way. You can't use L1 and square to set them with typing in numbers. So now the input range of 0 to 1, you can see on the graph it's showing a live feed of what value is going on. So a range of 0 to 1, and then it stretches it out to be in a range 0 to 2. So when we're at 1, then it's outputting a 2. When we're at 0.5, it's outputting a 1, because that's in between 0 and 2. And when we're at 0, it's still 0, but you can like expand that as well. So now it's got these funny ranges to whatever you need. So it's very easy to kind of remap a range of values to another range of values. A couple of other cool things on the remap thresholds graph is if I play time and give it some data, then I can press learn input range, and whatever's on the screen at that point, it'll change the minimum to the minimum value it received. So if we put that, widen that out like that, and the maximum to the maximum value received. So now let's play time, give some values, and then learn input range. So it's grabbed that 0 value or 0.1 value it got to, and the 1, and snapped the range to those values. So that's pretty useful for kind of getting the range of like an impact sensor, which can be all sorts of values, things like that. It doesn't do anything during the game. You just use it in edit mode while playing or whatever to set that, and then it's set in stone while you're actually playing the scene. And another thing is invert output, which just flips the maximum and minimum. So now so if I reset this, instead of going from 0 to 1 and outputting 0 to 1, it goes 0 to 1, and the 1 becomes a 0, and the 0 becomes a 1, or like whatever other value. So it just flips those around like that, so that's quite useful. You can also shape that, so normally it's on no shaping mode, but if you press X on the remap curve, then you go through all these options. So flip values below minimum, this is for the input, so if we have that below 0, then you can see the real value is below 0, but the output value is flipped up. So instead of going further and further down, it then starts going up and up again. So you can even go further than the top edge. Make that a bit shorter, you can see. Make that range a bit bigger. So it's bounced so far up again that it's going beyond the top. And then you can clamp values, which means it just won't allow values that are below and above the input range to do anything. So when you're below that, then it will just send the lowest value it's allowed, and when you're above, let's make this bigger as well, when you're over the range, then it will just send the top value for the output. Ease in is similar to smoothing, but it's not based on time, it's based on the value you're actually sending. So now we're back to a range of 0 to 1. So if I send in 0.5, it's actually sending 0.3 because it's, as you can see on this kind of visualization, it goes up slower for lower values and then faster for higher values. So as we go higher, it's reaching, let's just reset this as well, it's reaching the actual value quicker than these lower values. So 0.2 is only 0.04, whereas 0.9 is 0.81. which is a lot closer to it. And there's ease out as well, which works the other way around. So when you're if you were going backwards, I guess, then over here it takes longer. We're at 0.7 and the output is still at 0.91. And when you're at a lower value, then it's a lot closer to the actual value. And you can see it kind of the differences in the readout there. Ease in and out is ease in and ease out. So around the middle, it's closer to the actual value. But then as you go lower, it's lower than the value, and as you go higher, it's higher than the value. Things like that. And then there's threshold. Threshold, so if the input reaches the top of the input range, then it will send the output top number. Otherwise, it will send the output bottom number. So then you can say if the value is greater than or equal to 1, then send 0.68. Otherwise, send 0.14 or whatever you want. So, so these settings are super useful in certain circumstances. So those are the shaping modes. Edge mode is pretty useful as well. So if you put this onto pulsat on, so this is just a readout of what this is outputting to make it a bit easier. So when we set it to 1, then you see this pulse happen. So the pulse actually sends this value and then carries on sending this value. So you can adjust what the pulse actually does, but normally you'd leave it at 0 and 1. So when this gets to the top of the input range, then it will send, that's considered on for the edge definition. So then it sends a pulse of this output maximum, and then pulsat's off will be when it gets to the bottom range. So if we go down, then it sent a pulse when we got past this the input minimum. Pulse that's on or off will pulse at either a point, like that. Toggle the output on, toggle the output at on, will change from sending the maximum of the output to the minimum of the output, and vice versa each time it gets that on edge. So now it's off, now it's on, now it's off, and so on. And it always starts at off, so that now it's on and off and whatever. And you can toggle it at off as well. So if we go down, now it's on and then off and then on, and again on and off. When it's considered on, then it will set it to be on forever. And when it goes to off, then it will be considered off forever, basically. Kind of like the threshold, but then it will just stay at being on, even if values do other stuff in this range. So here we have a fat wire coming in. A fat wire kind of looks like braided multiple smaller wires. This is because they carry multiple signals in one wire, basically. And you'll see on the face of the signal manipulator that it shows each of those values. So we've got 0.6, 0.3, 0.1, and it's showing those values as their own little bar graph in there. And if you open this up and go into the custom remapper mode, then you'll see as you play time, it shows all of those as their own independent line graphs as well, moving around and stuff. And these shaping things all work independently of each other as well for the independent values. So all of these settings apply to each of these values as if they were separate things. So when you wire a fat wire into here, you have a couple of extra options. The bypass, instead of it just being an arrow like that, it is now named after the individual inputs. of the fat wire, and it's the same on the splitter over here, the names or the icons or whatever. So you can say, let's say we invert them all. So now 0.8 becomes 0.2. But then if we bypass A, then A will just go through as normal. But B and C will still be inverted. So 0.6 becomes 0.4, 0.1 becomes 0.9. Something to be aware of is when you're in edge mode, it is going to send one of these values. It's not going to send the fat wire special values. So it outputs just a regular signal, which is just a number like that. So then you can't split it or do anything with it really when you have these edge modes on, but that kind of makes sense. But also when you have some of these easing remap curve stuff, so if you have no shaping and flip values, that's fine. But then with clamp values and ease in, ease out, ease in and out, and threshold, then it outputs just a number as well. It doesn't output a fat wire like it had coming in. That also affects these other tabs. So remember when we're on something like that, then the bypass, because we're outputting just a single number, you can't like let the different individual values of the fat wire go through. But then if you go to one of these other tabs, the bypass still doesn't work. So you have to put this back to no shaping, and now the bypass works. Not for that, because that's a different case. And I think the same for edge mode. It stops the bypass working, but actually it allows it on the other tabs. I'd like to thank Bobby Love, Dead MC, Cantaloupe, and all of my other supporters for making this tutorial possible. Thanks for watching. If you'd like me to continue making these tutorials and helping creators across the internet, you can find out how to support me in the link in the description. Thanks for your consideration, and I'll see you in the next one.